the Naval Academy guys is very similar to what you have as a SWO. And while I was at the academy, I learned about the overseas mission that we had there going on in Bahrain, and I was like, that is like my ultimate goal. Like, September 11th happened, and that was my calling to join the service. And so I wanted to go and serve, and do the expeditionary mission that we had going on at the time. And I got that calling leaving Hawaii and got to go overseas. The biggest thing that I saw in change in the Coast Guard while we were there, and Commander Schaffler already kind of spoke to this, was that when we got there, we were working with the Navy. It was an 11 patrol boat mission while we were there. We had 5 Navy PCs, the 179s that you guys are familiar with, and we had 6 Coast Guard 110s. Well, there was some naval engineer or some admiral decided while we were there that we were going to take those 5 Navy PCs offline and put them in a 1-year maintenance availability. I was there for 13 months of that 1 year. So you can figure that out. We ended up operating those 110-foot patrol boats for 4,000 hours in that year, or a little bit more than 4,000 for some of them. And when we got there, we were doing a security mission at the oil platforms that Captain mentioned. That security mission, as we began to transform and transfer their responsibility over to the Iraqi militaries, whether it was the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, we backed off of that security mission a little bit. While Commander Schaffler was on the shore doing the training with the Iraqi border guard, we were going in and doing shoreside training with the Navy. So when we first got there, we were full-blown security mission. Then we started going into Iraq and doing the training shoreside. Shortly after that, during maybe about eight-month mark for me there, they started receiving patrol boats that they purchased from Bollinger Shipyard down in Louisiana. And they were coming out to the oil platforms to start doing the security patrols themselves. All the meantime, while we were doing inspections on ships or cargo vessels coming in to bring supplies to the oil platforms, we would go to the oil platform and pick up Iraqi Marines and bring them out and train them on how to do the boardings, how to do the security sweeps through the vessels, what to look for, etc. And then the Navy showed up and they had their new patrol craft, and we had to teach them how to do that layered defense that Captain mentioned there, just at an oil terminal. So we showed up to an 11 patrol boat mission. It went down to 6 patrol boat mission, and then we trained the Iraqi Navy and the Iraqi Marine Corps on how to conduct their missions. And right before I left, we actually pulled out of the security zone and turned the entire operation over to the Iraqi Navy. So that was the biggest thing that I saw as far as change in that global war on terrorism mission. Leaving Iraq, I commanded a patrol boat down in Gulfport, Mississippi, as Captain mentioned, working for Sector New Orleans. There I was tasked, a major part of our operations there were still global war on terrorism type missions, doing maritime security operations. Some of the events that we got to do there, securing the port of New Orleans, were the Super Bowl. Obviously, Mardi Gras every year draws a huge crowd and a huge terrorist threat. And then the War of 1812 is an ongoing operation that we have traveling the country right now. And that started in New Orleans. It's going to end in New Orleans. But those are the type of operations, maritime security operations, that I was part of there during that time.
You know, in the Coast Guard world, the coolest job in the Coast Guard has got to be the command of a 87-footer. You're a JG, right, at the time. So you're 24 years old, in charge of a multi-million-dollar boat with a crew. I never got to do that, but I wish I had. That's the coolest job in the Coast Guard right there.
It is. Thank you. They sent you to Bahrain. They sent me to Hawaii on my patrol boats.
They sent me to Basra. What happened?
So those are the things that changed for Coast Guard missions. But let me ask you all, what stayed the same?
Well, I think for me,
everything else.
Yes. You know, just like in Katrina and several other areas where the Coast Guard is gone, we found that our consistency was one of the things that really shown through to others and to ourselves. We train the same way on each platform everywhere. So for Katrina, for instance, we saved some 35,000 lives. We didn't lose a single airframe. It's because we train the same in Mobile as we train in San Francisco.
Standardization,
As we train in
yeah.
Pensacola, as we train in New
Yeah.
York. Everyone's got the same training. A lot of the Army and a lot of the other services have different MOSs as they move to different geographic areas.
Yes,
We're the
keep it
same
stable.
across our entire spectrum of operations. So I think what's stayed the same for me is that no matter where I've gone, and I've done a lot of different Coast Guard geographic areas, is that I can always count on the continuity of our service and the quality of our people.
Very rigorous TTP, very rigorous standards, and the capabilities, of course, which the Office of the Capabilities focuses on as in designing and in managing. Gunnar, your thoughts?
I would say that, from after September 11th, that we shift focus, but we never completely lose focus on what we do. We do a lot of aids to navigation throughout the country, making sure that the commercial shipping can move safely throughout our waterways. You would think that we would lose focus on that mission because it doesn't seem very glamorous during a time of war, but we've never put that mission away. We actually control the bridges that go over navigable waterways. That office never stood down. We've maintained these missions, pre 9/11 to post 9/11, and doing it very well. We do it right now. I think we're core strength is about 41,000 Coast Guard men and women. That's it.
Smaller than the New York City Police
Yeah.
Department.
I think, total people on payroll, Coast Guard payroll is about 80,000 people. So,
Civilian, contractor, everybody.
that's everybody.
Yeah,
So, I mean, again, that's about what the police force in New York City is. So, I would say that that continuity has always been there. I've been in the Coast Guard since 1989, and I cannot remember a single thing that we've given up since 1989,
But
even
taking
today.
on a lot more stuff.
And taking on an immense challenge.
We
One thing to
started as 10 suitably equipped
Yeah.
vessels to protect the harbors of the then 1789 United States of America.
I think one thing
That
to
was the
really
Coast
remember is the Coast Guard provides a lot of bang for the buck. We have a very small budget, but we do a lot of work. And we do that work throughout the United States. We do it overseas. We do it in places where people would never expect the Coast Guard to be, like Singapore and Japan, Guam. I did a tour in Iraq with my lead-at. We were there prior to the start of Operation Iraqi Freedom. I did 4 months during Iraqi Freedom, making sure that we could get supplies from the Persian Gulf up into Qasar, which was their major port. But the people at home were still doing their day in, day out jobs. So I think that's what the American people can be proud of about the Coast Guard, is that we don't just drop something to go do something else. We're still doing, what we do.
A little bit for everyone in this.
Just impressive on the rivers, on the coasts, in the lakes, any navigable body of water. The Coast Guard's there, as well as our overseas duties. Ice-breaking.
Yeah, this is a did you know session. But I am mindful of the time and I'm mindful of the long day. So I did want to offer a brief opportunity for all of you to ask any questions that you may have of the panel as you look. And the brave soul down in front.
For the first time, we're actually taking folks. Recruiting is open, so there's still chance. Okay, guys. We were full the past few years, but we're taking folks.
Yeah, actually, we were shut down. We were so, I don't know if that's because you're popular or because, I don't know what that's about.
Really, the thing I wanted to say is just in the short time you have spoken, My mind has wandered all around the coastal areas of the United States, all the threatened and vulnerable areas. It's a nice feeling to know you're out there. We live in Alabama, so we Mobile and Pensacola and New Orleans, and you know, scary things can happen. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Another question, sir?
Comment, in an earlier life I had in the Army was a terminal transportation commander in XO, and during reforger, did 7 reforgers with ro-ro ships and fast sea lift ships in Mobile, Savannah, Baltimore. And your comment was exactly right. Within an hour of us docking the ships and taking over the ships for roll-on, port security, Coast Guard port security was there. Every time the briefing was essentially the same. I knew exactly what I had with the Coast Guard assets, and really thank you for that.
Don't discount the power that you as individuals will have in your service when you serve. Because before 9/11 happened, a couple of people in MSO, Marine Safety Office Philadelphia, looked at what our port plans were in the face of a threat and said, we have completely lost our capacity. It has withered and gone away to do port security. Our reservists had a dedicated port security rating, and they were being used to respond to maritime oil spills. But it wasn't a port security threat. We weren't focused on that. It had atrophied. And Senior Chief Bob Ward and a couple of other folks at Marine Safety Office Philadelphia created a revised personal qualification standard for port security. Nobody cared about it. Nobody looked at it. They did it. They implemented it. They trained to it.